Good evening. Lawmakers have 2 days to come up with a deal on the budget or else.
If Congress does not step in to stop automatic budget cuts by Friday, $46 billion will be cut out of the Defense Department's budget. The president wants to see a mix of new tax revenue and targeted spending cuts. Republicans agreed to raise taxes in the fiscal cliff deal last month, and they say that is enough. So what are our elected officials doing to come up with a sequester solution?
News Channel 15 got word from both sides of the aisle in the Senate today. Drew Blair is here with what Indiana lawmakers are saying and what they're hearing from the people they represent. Drew?
Mark and Heather, Dan Coates and Joe Donnelly represent opposite parties, but agree that Washington needs to put a stop to delays and a passed budget is a must.
In about 1 day, probably Dan Coates and I could get this thing done. But unfortunately, it's not just Dan and I who make this decision.
If it was up to Senator Joe Donnelly, avoiding massive spending cuts would be more simple than it's proving to be.
I think we have a lot more common sense in Indiana than we have in Washington. I try to use Hoosier common sense, and I can only work with the people that the rest of the nation sends here to work with me.
Donnelly and his cross-aisle counterpart, Senator Dan Coates, point out the sequester is only one drop in a much bigger budget bucket.
It all comes down to the individual and to families. It doesn't come down to some accountant's balance sheet. It doesn't come down to some just gross number that's being talked about out there. It comes out down to the pain and the suffering that so many people have gone through in this last 4 years and are continuing to encounter.
What's not included in the so-called sequester is the discussion of entitlement program spending.
Let me be straight out, say the things that you're not supposed to say because it's political suicide. If we don't reform Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security, it doesn't matter what else we do, we can't solve this problem.
It is just sitting there, and is very, very clearly an area where we cannot have long-term stability without dealing with those issues.
If leaders don't come to an agreement by Friday's deadline, cuts will take place over the next 7 months.